Welcome back. In this subunit, we're going to discuss alternate ways of measuring general damages. All right, in the previous subunit, we discussed how to measure general damages, right, by measuring the benefit of the bargain. But there are other possible ways to measure general damages. We'll discuss those, and we'll discuss when those are used instead of measuring the benefit of the bargain or the expectancy. So we'll talk about when we use reliance damages instead of the expectancy damages. We'll talk about when we might use restitution instead of the general damages or instead of the expectancy under the general damages. And we'll talk about how restitution works with the losing contract. And then we're going to talk about the cost of remediation, the cost of remediation as a measure of general damages versus the difference in market value, which is also a measure of general damages. All right, so let's talk about reliance damages. Now, reliance damages, if you remember from one of our previous subunits, reliance damages are putting the aggrieved party in the position she would have been, in the position she was before the contract, before the transaction. Whereas typically our general damages, we look for the expectancy, the benefit of the bargain, which is putting the aggrieved party in as good a position she would have been had the contract been performed. So when will we use reliance damages instead of the typical expectancy damages, the typical benefit of the bargain damages to measure general damages? If you remember, the plaintiff must prove her general damages with reasonable certainty. That means she must prove the benefit of the bargain. That means the seller must prove that she would have made some sort of profit, and the buyer or the service recipient must show that the cost of substitute performance is greater than the contract price. If these parties can't prove this, they can't prove a benefit of the bargain, they can still get reliance damages as a measure of their general damages. And this is just their out-of-pocket expenses. Let's look at how a court will award the aggrieved party reliance damages in lieu of expectation damages. Here's our basic fact pattern. Seller and buyer enter into a contract for the sale of the house for $100,000. Seller's closing costs and other expenses will be $5,000. Buyer repudiates the contract before law day. Seller had not paid for any expenses. Seller sells the house to a new buyer for $100,000. Seller pays $5,000 closing costs at the closing of the sale. So, what are buyer's expectation damages? What are seller's expectation damages? Buyer breached his contract. What are seller's expectation damages? Well, if you look, seller went out and got substitute performance for the same contract price, same closing cost, nothing changed. And so under this fact pattern, there are no damages. Seller has no expectation damages. Under this fact pattern, seller doesn't even have any reliance damages. Let's change it a little bit. Buyer repudiates the contract before law day. Seller had already paid $1,000 in expenses. Seller sells the house to a new buyer for $100,000. Seller pays $5,000 closing costs at the closing of the sale. So you see under this transaction, seller, after going out and finding substitute performance, is as good off as she would have been had the original buyer performed. She sold the house to a new buyer for $100,000 and had $5,000 closing costs, same as she would have had under the original contract with buyer, which buyer repudiated. So no expectation damages, but here there are reliance damages. Before buyer had repudiated the contract, seller had already paid $1,000 in expenses. And so seller can recover $1,000 in reliance damages in lieu of expectation damages from repudiating buyer. Here's one more example. We have a contract between contractor and homeowner to build a home addition for $100,000. Homeowner repudiates the contract after contractor had already installed $10,000 worth of materials in the home. Contractor's total expenses for the project would have been $100,000. All right, so if we're trying to calculate the expectancy damages, we look at the contract price, which is $100,000, less contractor's expenses, which here would have been $100,000. So contractor entered into a contract where it would not have made a profit. Thus, contractor has no expectation damages. But that doesn't mean contractor can't get any damages. Look what the fact pattern says. Contractor had already installed $10,000 worth of materials in the home. Reliance damages. So even though contractor does not have an expectancy under this contract, contractor can get reliance damages. Contractor would not have made a profit, so contractor cannot recover the profit for homeowner's breach, but contractor can recover $10,000 in reliance damages from homeowner because of homeowner's breach. All right, so we just talked about when we'll use reliance damages in lieu of the expectancy damages or the benefit of the bargain damages. Let's talk about when we will use restitution in lieu of the expectancy damages and the benefit of the bargain damages. So just to quickly refresh our memory, the aggrieved party, the plaintiff, must prove her general damages with reasonable certainty. In other words, the seller or service provider has to show that she would have made a profit under this contract, and the buyer and service recipient has to show that the cost of substitute performance is greater than the contract price. But what if I can't prove that? Well, if I can't prove that, then I get reliance damages, which are just my out-of-pocket expenses. Now, the restitution scenario takes us into a situation where we have a losing contract. And the consequences of a losing contract for the aggrieved party is that there is no benefit of the bargain, and their reliance damages will be reduced. Okay, so let's just get a basic idea. Imagine we enter into a contract where I am the service provider and the contract price is $10,000. But it turns out that my costs of providing the services to you will be $11,000. So the contract price is $10,000. The cost of providing the services to you is $11,000, which means I suffer a $1,000 loss. I've entered into a losing contract. It's a contract where not only will I not make a profit, but I will suffer a loss. So you breaching the contract is actually good news for me. All right, so now I sue you for damages. Well, can I get expectancy damages? Well, expectancy damages are the benefit of the bargain. I had no profit, so I have no benefit of the bargain. So I can't prove those with reasonable certainty. What can I get? Well, I can get reliance damages. So let's assume, same scenario, contract price of $10,000. The cost of me providing the services to you is $11,000, a losing contract of $1,000 for me. Let's assume I've already had $2,000 in out-of-pocket expenses. So now I ask for reliance damages. I ask for $2,000. Well, here's the kicker. The object of reliance damages is still the object of general damages, which is to put the aggrieved party in as good a position she would have been had the contract been performed. Okay? Where would I have been had the contract been performed? Where would I have been if you had not breached the contract? I would have suffered a $1,000 loss. So my reliance damages has to, the amount of my reliance damages has to be so much that I will suffer a $1,000 loss. How much were my out-of-pocket expenses? My out-of-pocket expenses were $2,000. How much should the court give me? Well, the court should give me $1,000 in Reliance Damages. Why? Because if the court gives me $1,000 in Reliance Damages, I will suffer a $1,000 loss. My out-of-pocket expenses were $2,000. The court gives me $1,000, right? The court awards me $1,000. Of course, it's going to be the breaching party, you, that pays me that $1,000. And after I get that $1,000, I will suffer a $1,000 loss, which is where I would have been had you not breached the contract. As an alternative, I might say, to heck with this, I'm not suing under the contract. I'm going to sue under quasi-contract, under restitution. If I sue under the contract, I'm going to suffer a loss. I'm not going to sue under the contract. I'm going to sue under quasi-contract for restitution. Let's take a look at an example of how that would work. Let's look at an example of how damages would work in the case of a losing contract. So, in our fact pattern, builder agrees to build a house on owner's land for $1 million. Owner repudiates after builder had already spent $500,000. So owner is the breaching party, builder is the aggrieved party, contract price is $1 million. Builder has already spent $500,000 when owner repudiates. But what if owner can show it would have cost builder an additional $600,000 to finish the house? Let's just take a quick look at this. Builder has already spent $500,000. If it will cost builder an additional $600,000 to finish the house, that means a total cost of $1.1 million to build this house. What is the contract price? $1 million. That means builder has entered into a losing contract. Builder would lose $100,000 under this contract. $1.1 million in expenses, contract price of $1 million. It's a losing contract, not a good deal for builder. So what would be builder's expectancy benefit of the bargain profit, right? If builder now sues owner for breach, what is builder's expectancy? The answer is none. It's a losing contract for builder. What are builder's reliance damages in lieu of expectancy? Remember, the aggrieved party can get reliance damages in lieu of expectancy. Well, let's take a look. What are builder's reliance damages? It looks like $500,000, right? Owner repudiates after builder has already spent $500,000. But it's not $500,000. Why? Because reliance is really still part of expectancy, and the reliance damages still have to put the builder in as good a position, or in this case, in as bad a position she would have been had the owner not breached. And so what position would builder have been in if owner had not breached this contract? Builder would have lost $100,000. So if we give builder $500,000 as damages, builder is better off because owner breached. And that's not how the reliance damages work. So to put builder in as bad a position she would have been had owner performed the contract, we have to make sure she loses $100,000. And so the reliance damages that we will award builder under these circumstances is $400,000. And you can see by awarding her $400,000 in damages after she has spent $500,000 on this project, she is going to lose $100,000. So builder says, I don't like that result. I am not going to sue under the contract. Hey court, let's pretend the contract didn't exist. I am not suing for breach of contract. I am going to sue under restitution, quasi-contract. I conferred a benefit upon the owner It was not gratuitous, right? I didn't do it as a gift. It was not officious. It's not like I just trespassed on her land and built something. I built something and I spent $500,000. I think that is the value of the benefit. Right? And I think that the builder can make a very good argument that the expenses that she has incurred to build whatever she has already built on owner's land is the value of the benefit conferred, $500,000. So under these circumstances, the court would award the builder $500,000 in restitution. Owner would have to pay $500,000 in restitution, quasi-contract, to builder. Builder would not be suing for breach of contract under these circumstances. Now, there's one really important point here that makes restitution a good argument here. The important point is that builder is building a house on owner's land. And because whatever builder has already built on that land is on owner's land, owner has received a benefit. If builder was building this house on its own land for owner, right, and later it was going to transfer the property to owner, then at this point, builder would not have a good cause of action for restitution. Why? Because builder built whatever partial building that builder has completed up to now, spending that $500,000 would be on builder's land. So once again, restitution in this fact pattern is possible because builder was building on owner's land. All right, let's talk about another way to measure general damages, the cost of remediation, which is very close to the concept of the cost of substitute performance, right? Remediation as the measure of general damages is just the cost of fixing the other party's breach. Let's look at a simple example. So homeowner hires house painter to paint her house. She pays up front. The house painter does a poor job, a very poor job in one room of the house, and the house painter fails to cure the breach. Homeowner then hires someone else to repaint the room at a cost of $500, right? That is the cost of remediation. That is the measure of general damages here for homeowner. So house painter will have to pay $500 in general damages to the homeowner, the cost of fixing the problem. Now, remediation, the cost of remediation, or remediation as the measure of general damages, can be quite costly at times. And when it is very costly, the court might instead award the diminution in value, the reduction in market value. This is better understood through looking at an example. So let's say we have a contractor and an owner, and the contractor promises the owner to build a house using XYZ brand nails. Because of a mix-up, contractor uses another brand of nails, does not use XYZ brand nails. Has contractor breached? Yes, contractor is in breach. This is something we talked about before. Contractor is in minor breach and not material breach, right? So in any case, contractor has breached the contract. What damages is the owner entitled to under these circumstances? Well, there are a couple ways we can measure the owner's damages, the aggrieved party's damages in this case, which is remediation, replacing all the nails, right? Fixing that, the cost of doing that, or the difference in market value, right? The difference between a house, a completed house that has used XYZ brand nails, and a house that has used this other brand of nails, which is just of slightly lower quality. Well, the cost of remediation for replacing all the nails in this house would be very costly. It would basically be the entire cost of rebuilding the house, right? So that would be extremely costly. But let's speculate. What is the difference between a house that has XYZ brand nails and a house that has the nails of a different brand that are only of slightly lower quality? Well, there might be no difference in value, but let's just assume that the difference in value is very small. Which will a court award? Will a court award the owner the damages for remediation, which are very high, or will a court award just the difference in value? And the answer is, when there is such a disproportionate difference between the cost of remediation and the difference in market value, the reduction in market value, the court will award the reduction in market value as the measure of the general damages. So in this case, it is likely a court will say that the contractor is in breach, but the contractor does not have to pay the cost of remediation because it would be too high. The general damages should be measured by the reduction in market value of what was promised and what was actually delivered.